Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session of the event OGP that we have called an empiric approximation to algorithmic transparency in Latin America, having as host the Transparency Council and Adolfo Ibáñez University, both institutions from Chile. Transparency is a part of one of the main principles in this ethical that we need now, and we inform the citizen how the data is used when the usage of algorithm affects them. In the States, the use of algorithmic system is something new, both for solving public issues, both as to increase the coverage of services given to the people. Therefore, transparency is also a legal responsibility of public institutions in Latin America, and it is one of the driving principles when using this type of system in government. In this occasion, the panelists will share their experience on their empirical approaches of algorithmic transparencies, sharing their findings and learning and using automated system in different countries. And that way we will install this subtopic of transparency and access to public information in government. The panel will share the experience of three countries where there's already an empirical work on algorithmic transparency: Chile, Argentina, and Colombia. In this activity, we will have the participation of David Paceta. He's a lawyer with a PhD in social science, and he teaches political science, public order, among other classes. He has also published several articles, and currently he's the General Director for the Transparency in Chile. Romina Garrido is also a lawyer, and she is specialized in ethical data. She's also been an advisor in both the public and private system, and she is an assisted researcher of GobLab as well. We also have Gemma Caldon, PhD, director of the Ethicas Foundation, who will present the Argentinian case. And also we have Maria Paula Mujica. She is currently the advisor of the Presidency Council in Transparency in Algorithm in AI in Colombia. She's also part of the AI task force. She's the author of the framework for AI work in Colombia, and she has driven several initiatives. Among the most important is the follow-up for ethical work and getting together experts for IE, and she will present the case of Colombia. Please remember that your questions can be done in the Q&A button on your screen, and they will be answered by our panelists once all the interventions are done. Then, without further ado, I give you Gemma Galdon. Gemma, you have 10 minutes, please. Thank you very much for inviting me to share our practical experience in ethical use of AI. And I think we need more forum like this. There's many principles that we need to set up and like best practice, and I take a lot of pride in keep working in this. Just to give us some context, I run the Ethicas Foundation, and the purpose of our foundation is protect people and technological process. And to do that effectively, we do a lot of activities like research. We also work with government to develop technological laws. We work both with private and public institutions when they want to do AI, and we try to set up these principles in their design. We do audits, we open the algorithm to see any bias that may be within them and that they have an equal impact on society or may be creating injustice while using this personal data. What we are seeing with this explosion of data usage is not only for entertainment. The algorithm that we are more used to are made in Silicon Valley, and they go for entertainment and so on, and they're biased algorithm, and nothing happens really if an ad is not important to you. But when those same algorithms are being used in sensitive issues like health or workplace, then the bias do have an effect, and the cautions that we need to take are also greater, as with the technology that has gone from making suggestion in Amazon or Netflix, and then it went to high sensitivity areas where somebody is decided if somebody receives health care or public funding, or if something has risk conducts and maybe be without benefits. So we see the use of scientific science in very sensible areas, and so the AI legislation in Europe has agreed with it, and so guarantees are required that are more stringent. The problem is nobody has defined these guarantees, so we need to have certainty that when AI is used in sensible areas, needs guarantees, but we need to develop these guarantees. And now we are very lucky to have very large companies and institutions backing us, so we can have practical mechanism to allow the technology to grow in relations to the values of the society and what risk we are willing to accept and what we want with data to be used or not. Some of the high sensitivity areas and where the government has a lot of alarms is in work area. A lot of countries have contacted us, among them Argentina, and how we can improve algorithmic transparency in work-related issues. And it's not a chance. This is one of the areas where we see the current technological dynamic goes along with, in a very strong way, with social issues. And in the working area, all the technologies that have been implemented always reinforce the power and capacities of the employer. We don't have any technology to defend the workers' rights, and one of the aspects where we can see it is in this precisely this worker aspect, where we have unions in governments and also companies that are looking how to incorporate this new technology but in a fair and equal manner. And in many countries, work has been done on laws about algorithm transparency and requirements to whenever this technology is used in high risk areas, then we need to decide what it means transparency. Do we release the code? So is it GitHub? Then we can say the system is transparent. And what we have found when they require for us to do algorithmic transparency in work-related areas, then what they needed, these unions and their workers, was to see what material they were using and what experience our members needed to have to do an actual follow-up in the system that were used upon them and to meet the requirements set by law. So we work with different actors, and now we are trying to internationalize the tool that we made for Argentina, where we have an algorithmic prospect that should go along with any AI initiative whenever it's work related. So why would we do this way? We didn't start from zero. We saw how the society managed the translation from complex technological advancement and how you present that to the people. In the USA, for example, they have proposed for a while a nutrition label for AI. And what we appreciate in our work is that when we talk about high risk AI in work related areas, the nutrition label is too small. We are talking about very serious impacts. If somebody gets a job or maybe they are fired from it, it is a very big impact on their lives. And when This algorithm use this data, and so we need to upgrade the requirement level, going from nutritional label, to do it further. So in Europe, the AI law that we're expected to be approved from 12 to 18 months, where it adapts many of the principles from the medical control research in the same spaces of high-risk AI. And what is the example that we found that could meet the requirement that we have, and that could be a solution that is approachable for the regulator that wants to do algorithmic transparency? And then, yes, the medication prospect. This is the document or the sheet that goes along with any medicine that gives us information on how to use it. That is basic information about who is the manufacturer, the certification that has gone through this medicine, and to see what happens if you have some adverse reaction. So this sheet gives us, let us know how we can exercise our rights without being chemists, and then we can have confidence in the system. So what we have developed for Argentina, and now we want to make it more public, and we're in the pilot process, is a model of this sheet where we name it algorithmic prospect, since the inspiration came from the medicine, is to gather information that is required to know how the algorithm works. This goes from who developed it and who implemented it, and information more market related, and going to cautions that have been taken about this AI. The algorithm has been audited before, because in the future every high risk algorithm should be audited, and to ensure this algorithm transparency needs to be audited, and the audit should be available for the population. In case if there's no auditor, we want to have in our prospect key information that the user can take important decisions on how adequate this system is used in the right context. We are valuing what is the technical information that we want to ask, more so than define the type of algorithm, because there are many kinds. There's some based on norms, there's another decision trees, or maybe another one that are even more complex. And then we, instead of asking what is the type of algorithm that we are using, what training data has been used for that algorithm, ask also what bias have been identified in the risk identification, and how those bias have been mitigated, and is the methodology for mitigation is proper, and a series of questions that we want for the product development team to answer. So it's not a lawyer exercise, because this is, we have found many times, and the impact assessment that we have done, where we have tried to found transparency, we have found an important dysfunction, because the impact assessment is a very narrative effort, and the engineering team doesn't do that. So what they do is to give that impact assessment to their lawyer teams. So at the end, the information released is not always the best that we will get from the actual developers, but rather from the lawyers. So we want the prospect to be done during the development of the algorithm by their teams. So it's a document highly technical, but at the same time will give that information to the people that use it or receive the algorithm to understand it and identify risk. This is not going to solve all the problems, but this will empower the regulator and the user to make the proper question, so as to have answers on how their algorithm works, and value the mitigation that they are there, and how we make other better, and how the auditors can do a better job and make a more intense follow-up, and to see how that algorithm works and so on. So along with that, and other methods that we have developed, is some of the practice stuff that we have developed, and this is the first that we piloted in Argentina, and then we want to expand it to the all of the region that is being backed by IABD, and we want to go from Argentina and to move throughout the continent to have practical, ethical, to protect the rights, workers' rights, in objective manner when we are using AI. So I don't want to abuse my time, so I leave it up to here. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gemma. It was a great summary of what you have done in Argentina. Thank you for sharing your experience. Next, we have Paula Mujica, who will share Colombia's experience. Paula, please, you have your 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Well, I will talk about the Colombia's experience in using AI and implementation and ethical framework that we are using in Colombia to make transparency when using AI in different projects currently that are either being implemented or are already in use by our government. The ethical framework was released in October. This document includes within its principle the transparency principle, the privacy, human control of decision making, and the uses of AI, responsibility, and this is something that is similar to other documents that have been used in ethical framework for AI and other principles that have been especially important for that are being developed in Colombia right now. So, one of these principles is the discrimination. This is something very important, as we'll explain later, when we are using AI in social areas, when we give monetary help, and we also have the principles of inclusion, strengthening the rights of kids and young people. Especially with a sandbox document like this one, is to bring into practice all these actions and to guarantee that the principles are used by the AI system. And in the ethical framework, we develop a mechanism for implementation, and this mechanism is a follow-up for the ethical framework on AI. In this platform, the public institutions report on how they are implementing this principle and in their projects. And this is what I'm going to show now. I'm going to share my screen so you can all see it, and you can see how this is used and how we are taking these ideas and principles into practice, in particular on what is important for us right now. Thank you very much. So, as I was talking, this is the following dashboard. This dashboard is hosted in the AI website for the Colombian government, and everybody can access it. Anybody can log in, see this dashboard if they have internet connection. And the idea is, as I mentioned, this is where the institution uploads their AI projects, and this is the way that it has been built. Is targeted towards public institutions, and in particular their artificial intelligence projects. So in this first page you can see all the principles that comprise the ethical framework. There we have the entities that are uploading their projects and the area that they belong. There we have, see on the right, how many projects do we have right now, the investment, the institutions that participate, and the areas, and then the OCDE principles. And within the questionnaire that the institution have to answer, they indicate the artificial intelligence system that they are developing or using already, and they have to include the sustainable area. This is a general view of all the information that is being uploaded, and then in the second page we can see the projects themselves and their details. So each entity must upload the entity does it within their criteria, their knowledge of the project, and they then upload their project into the dashboard. They make a little description, and then we know the entity responsible, the amount of resources, the percentage of development, and here we have something very important, where we have the name of the person in charge of the project. In this way, we ensure transparency, because if anybody sees themselves affected, they can actually contact the people or the person that works in the entity with this AI system, and they can tell them more about the project and any further detail that they may need. Below we have each of the principles of the ethical framework, and the entity includes the description of how their project abides by this principle. Here we have how they are meeting their principles in this particular project. So this is the road. This is a project done by the road institution, and they explain how, using satellite imagery, they're looking for tertiary roads among other systems, so they can achieve conclusions and map all the tertiary roads. So in this case, we can see the rights of the kids is not included because they will not be affected. However, we see there's a major effort to show citizens how this project will affect them in inclusion or discrimination. At the same time, we have here, for the social benefits, we put the sustainable issues that the project entails, and here we inform all the people that can see, that go to this dashboard, how this project affects them. So aside from the principles in the ethical framework, we have included more information about the project, the definition of the type of the system according to the Audits. So we have this coordination between the system use and data that can be useful about artificial intelligence in the country. So one of the main challenges that the project faces here at the bottom, and you can see all of this in the dashboard, and it's important that the entity that is actually using or developing the project complete this dashboard. And you can see here we have more projects that are also very important, like this one, the BTTO project, that it is a project that affects directly underage people. So in this case, the principle changed completely from the tertiary roads project. So here we do have to include because we are using AI to include as many kids as possible to get help, because before they wouldn't be included within the mapping done beforehand, and so they were left out from the allocation of resources. So in this way, this project is very important, and they have to complete all this information, and then it is uploaded so as anybody can consult or the projects, and because this is a project that can affect them directly. So just having the approach and the reach of the project is very important, and then they see how the technology is being used and developed in a way that can affect them. So we can see how resources are being mapped and how these tools are getting into the hands of the citizens, and they can see the responsible usage and ethical protection and usage of their data. And it is important for, and with that I finish my presentation, and if anybody has a question I will be more than glad to answer it. Thank you, Maria Paula. The Q&A session will be at the end of the webinar, and it was very interesting to see all the advance that you have done in Colombia with AI. And next we have Romina Garrido. She will study algorithmic transparency in the public sector in Chile. Thank you very much, Vita. I will share now a little presentation. Good evening, everyone. I would like to share in this short 10 minutes an exploratory study about algorithmic transparency in the public sector of Chile that we done at the public innovation of the Adolfo Ibáñez University, thanks to the support and with an alliance with the Council for Transparency of the Chilean government. GobLab is the laboratory for public innovation of the government school from Adolfo Ibáñez University that promotes usage of data science to improve design and management and public policies in public institutions in Chile, and the issues of ethics on data, and in particular to see how transparency is beginning to take part of the automated decision making, is an issue that's been very interesting for many years now, and that thanks to a study that, because the Council for Transparency first showed a general overview of algorithmic transparency, we were able to generate an alliance that was very productive for both parts, where we could ask about the usage of automatic decision making in Chile, and then moving forward to propose more regulations or standards for said systems. So this study was done in 3 stages. Was done during this year from January to October. We started with an assessment of the information. Then this information about the usage of this system, we developed different sets of systems to measure and develop an algorithm and see how we're doing in Chile. And then the third part, based on the legal abilities of the Transparency Council, we set a standard that is, of course, in line with the Chilean legal framework. So the system that we investigated in the first part of the study, they go from algorithms that are very simple, rules for business, like kids get into school in Chile, that through an algorithm the system tells you what school a student can enroll according to certain requirements, and also system where proper AI like DART, that it is used in public health in Chile, where they detect preventively diabetes through IBLAN. So we were looking into from this system, support system for decision making, that includes artificial intelligence, and also something that were just purely artificial intelligence. So we started sending a letter to over 870 public entities where we asked if they were using any kind of artificial artificial intelligence system and what kind of data did they use, what was the unit that was responsible for the project or the system, or if they have any public information available for the system. By the way, when we discussed the answers, we faced many challenges because some entities said that they didn't use this system, but in public media they told the people that they were using said system. So we faced many challenges according to also with the wording on what we were looking for, what kind of system should we report. So during this assessment for information helped us to get a general picture of the moment in Chile with use of artificial intelligence and their use in the public sector. Of all the total that we surveyed, we got back 33% with high participation from local government, where from all the reported system, 40% were actually the ones that we were looking for. Public entities, many times, when they are asked by the Transparency Council, and given they are more of a cooperation entity more than a regulator one, so we have to make a huge work of exclude some system that only digitize one process, or maybe they are open data portals. So in the end, we were only left with 92 final systems, 92 systems that were within the Asian framework of the study. And on that, there was very little information available. Only 17 out of 92 had information available to the public and made by the entity itself, where they will tell why it was being used or what was the usage of the system. And this also let us know, this also let the people know that was a system. For the rest, there was no kind of any public information. And 19 system, there was public information, but by third parties. For example, by the developer, or maybe something in the press or something like. So out of this 92 system, we selected a set of them to evaluate it against an algorithm transparency framework. So we filtered in the information that we had and not ask the institution again, and also based in some criteria that we agreed with the Transparency Council that were important. For example, public information is the most needed where the people exercise the right to access public information. And in the end, we set 12 systems that we analyze against a reference framework, an international reference framework. We made several proposals to the council, and we in the end used the UK reference framework. And so against that, we made some cheats where the criteria, this ethical framework, was compared with the information publicly available, and in this way we created 12 cheats of 12 systems with different degrees of compliance and fulfilling of the cheats. It was a very interesting work that left us with a lot of learning and some findings that were very key. So, for example, sometimes it's very difficult to understand what is automated decision making or artificial intelligence. Also, lack of information, negative answer by public entities, but also positives. There was a chance advancement of algorithmic transparency. That is to say that the labor that the council has done and the legal framework that back up public access to information has enforced and has made public entities to make information available by themselves, it should be more ideal when the information is not so fragmented. There's no standardization for it, there's no defined end user for the information, but however the information was there. Now we have to find a way to systematize and standardize this information, and so the standard we propose based on the study, according to the law, the Chilean law that affects automated decision making, and also along with the transparency law of Chile that regards public government. So some of the criteria that we suggested in the standard, and this is my last information, that information should, basic information that will give people the required tools to interact and assess the automated decision making system that are being used by the government. You can see the study in the link below. It will be shared as well in the chat, and that's the experience that I wanted to share with you. Thanks, Romina, for sharing, and the current picture with the study that you did along with the Council for Transparency. And on that, we will give the floor to David Ibacet, that he will also reference the study, but in another facet. So please, you have your 10 minutes, David. Thank you very much, Vita. First of all, hello everyone. For us as a public institution, and we are the ones that we have to oversee compliance and execution of public information, it is vital, and it's a very good news for us that today we are talking about this relevant issue. And I'm going to mention something. It may seem against what I'm going to talk in the end, and I'm going to put this on quotes. With this type of issues today, the traditional law is shaking, they're afraid. But it's a fear that comes from ignorance or not knowing on what are related to the ideas of transparency, and linking that to algorithms. And I think that the main issues that we have found in this huge collaborative effort with Adolfo Ibáñez University is to understand and know what are we talking about when we say algorithm transparency, transparency by algorithm, or any other of the definitions that are used today. And without a doubt, the position and the reach that this is having in people's life, and this is more transcendent and transcends even more when we go over basic rights like the right to access public information. Data is being produced, is being used, is being consumed, and the experience that we have in these latest 24 months with the COVID pandemic has put us, or has placed on the table, the idea of set some sanitary requirements, also have traceability with the severity or the well-being of people, and this have had an impact in how we use mechanism, AI mechanism, that among many others explain or is part of the algorithm transparency phenomena. This also goes hand in hand with all the phenomena that we have seen in the last 20 years that is called the internet, and how technologies have become widespread, and from very small things on how societies are affected both at a local and country and continental level, and also how relations are between states and the decision that the state must make, especially nowadays when we have this huge sanitary emergency that we are still living under. So, algorithms start to show themselves in the private sphere and in the public sphere as well. And today, somebody here had mentioned that this data mining, there's some authors that this is a triumph of information, is a kind of new resource, a new type of oil, and this is a paradigm that goes with economical development, storage, who are using, what is the purpose of having this information, or how we acquire and store or save information, and what are the dimensions or the sides of this information are generating. Not only, and we have to understand this from the government, not only as usage, but something as well as that is key for public decision making based on the needs of the public. So we have this a very important circle or feedback, like where we are, that they need to take charge, and that is part of the legal framework where we have basic rights. So this also creates several risks that comes with issues linked with cybersecurity, with the problems related to the malicious usage of data and algorithm that can create trends in some issues that can become a very high impact in other rights. Another university raised the issues in hiring some people using some algorithms, and how that application of algorithms created immediately some elimination of people and create a discrimination process. What is to say about the issues related to work formula that has been set to determine or deliver something as limited release into the public for criminals, or the issue of facial recognition in particular. Yes, there has been proved that there are systems that bias or create biases when you towards automated decision making system. So this study and this cooperation we have done with Adolfo Ibáñez University and the GobLab department has generated several evidences or findings, and I'm not here to go deeper into what we just saw, but it is very vital for us, those cases where some government bodies either had algorithm-based decision-making system and they didn't know about it, or on the other hand, they had this system, or on the other hand, promote this system, and we actually realized that they didn't have it, and this has to do with the knowledge on this subject. Yes, it is true that what is interesting right now with the results on the table have to do with the ways that we are going to use this information now. The criteria that the study delivered are very important on how the system operate, the purpose of them, what type of accountability can be made, budget budgets of the system, it is important as well. A couple of days ago, the budget law was published, and how the government budgets will be used, how are the costs and the medium long-term benefits, and what should a government body have to actually inform the people in a relevant manner of the usage of this system. And so here we have some questions that arose on some contents can be considered as a legal requirement, and if you take this to the transparency law in Chile, at first you can say that there's some questions here and there, but there's the magic on the subject, because public institutions don't have to worry about the past of the present. I'm sorry, yeah, they have to worry about the past and the present. But now what they really should worry is about the future, 10, 15, 30 years down the line. And the legal framework in general is something very small. They have to be modified and fine-tuned, and it is a lot slower than the dynamic speed in which IT is moving. And I will say today, and here's the good news, yes, transparency laws are a part, but we need to analyze, interpret, and this is also a good news. Our board of directors has made a decision, because I cannot say legislate, so they make the decision of go further of a general instruction on algorithmic transparency. Understand that this is like a product or the document that arise from the abilities that the Council for Transparency has under the law. So this is very good news. So again, we are a little bit late on it, because we also celebrate a couple of days ago, on November 29th, the UK has dictated or published so their data digitized central office. So, and this means that we have to keep an eye on the UK and how these legal frameworks can affect what we are doing here with our own laws, and also how we can regulate as a government body. And the question comes, can we regulate? And yes. However, process of such nature have some work beforehand, when they have to be widespread, have enough training tools as well to train proper the people, and then afterwards, of course, this has to be done upon clear and well-defined laws. We connect, and when we think the classical administrative rights stop, we understand that at least 4 principles are here with the algorithm transparency mechanism or on automated decision-making system. So we have management system. They need to be a framework, and they should done from the first moment with transparency. And here there's a warning for the bureaucracy and for government bodies. We will have proper mechanism or automated decision-making system if and only if the direct intervention of public workers equals 0. And that is going to be a news where we have to keep an eye on that. There's a lot of work to be done, a lot needs to be developed. This has been an outstanding space for share ideas, and as a Council for Transparency, we are extremely satisfied and very happy and eager to keep forward with this type of initiative that are on the right track, the track of understand that the state is a dynamic body and it can no longer keep separating itself from the rest with ancient laws, but rather interpret those ancient laws looking to the future. And there lies the challenge for all the people that execute the law, they make the law, and especially for us, the Council for Transparency, that we are looking very deeply in what is happening here in the country and around the world. Thank you very much. Thank you, David, for making us look into the future and see the challenges that the Council for Transparency has faced and other institutions. Thank for the intervention of 4 panelists. Now we go to the Q&A section of the webinar, and we do have some questions. So first, we would like to ask the representative of Colombia, beyond the ethical framework, has the Colombian government proposed a regulation that impose requirement for algorithmic transparency? Well, for now, this is a law is not being sought after. We are having troubles with Maria Paula's signal. We will move along with another question. Oh, here she is. So, we will move along with the second question, and we will go back to Maria Paula later. Romina could answer the next question. What level of publicity and transparency should be given to the use and function of algorithm to take automated decisions in regard to people, taking into account that these people can be protected or intellectual property laws in a way that if they are given, it could affect the commercial rights, but also if they are not shared, they can affect people. So first we'll go Romina. I will answer very briefly that in the study we faced these challenges, especially when we ask for information to different public bodies, and what we realized that the type of preliminary information required for a very, very early stage of algorithmic transparency, understand it, as David said, that this is the beginning stage where training is very important. IP rights were not affected in regards to the questions or what is being evaluated in the ethical framework of algorithm when this is adopted at the first stage. So when we have meaningful algorithmic transparency, is basic and minimal information that the people needs to have to evaluate and interact with automated decision making system. So if there could be later stages where we have more descriptive information or more detail on how the algorithm use, but now we are thinking about the early stage and adopt a general instruction for algorithmic transparency. And the David news was very great news, because now public institution needs to know or needs to inform the people at the first stage with basic information, and said information will not affect intellectual property rights, but people need to know, and maybe Gemma can. So this is a very common question, and I think has an easy question. Again, we have experience in many other areas where we can regulate products without vulnerate IP. Like for example, Coca-Cola. Nobody knows the ingredients of Coke, but we know that it can be drunk by people. So without making the secret recipe of Coca-Cola, we know that nobody will die. So this is the same. We don't need to have the secret recipe of algorithm or something protected by IP laws, but we need to regulate the impacts of the algorithm that are within the framework of current regulation. So some of the challenges that we faced and we have faced before have been dealt before. So the question before was the legal framework. So in Latin American, we will do it next year. So how to activate the current legislation to protect the rights on technological environment, because they are protected in a legal framework. So we don't need really new nodes. So in Spain, we are developing a tool that this is a no value as a law, but it's a proposal by the ministry to use algorithm transparency that in the practice has a lot of importance. So it could be very simple to implement good practice to evaluate how impact the algorithm has on the people. The next question could be for Rodrigo. The RGPD logic. Where does the meaningful information on the logic applied by the algorithm? Yeah, we're trying to figure that out. We are piloting that to see what information do we actually need to access the required information to assess impacts. So we also have external audits where we are seeing some maybe doing audits without involvement of the original developer, doing reverse engineering, rebuilding how it was done and see the impacts. And we are evaluating to see how they are working or how the decision is being made by the algorithm. So the important for us is to be able to define impacts and anticipate said impacts. And the impacts need to be aligned with the legal framework and they don't generate more inequality. And we have to define what information is the one that we need to see if the algorithm doesn't generate further discrimination or bias. And to see also how the different impacts are held by different people, and that is the area or the borders where we work with the technology. So this is a question for David. In regards to what you mentioned, in public institutions that were not aware of having AI tools, and those that were aware but did not use them, what a strategy in regards to training people and adapt system so the use of these algorithm tools are really effective? Well, that is a very good question, and it is a question as well that sets an immediate challenge, and the challenge is how will be develop a proper strategy for trained people. And along the road, some laws have come along the way where we have dead letters. First, we need to set clear limits, define context, and I think that's the work we have done today with the Council for Transparency to define what is the general instruction. That is to say, set rules, define rules, procedures that are robust enough to work in technological conditions where this system can work properly and the instruction work properly, and also set a language that, yes, at the beginning should be pertinent for those developing the algorithm, like engineers, specialists on the subject, and on computer design as well. We need to make that language understandable for not only for the workers of the government, but also for the regular citizen, the end user, and that they are constantly asking for public information. And there we have a dilemma, but we can do that, we can fix that. It is a challenge, but it's doable. And of course, we as an institution, we will develop training processes, and we will arise the visibility and the state of the art on the institution, and that will allow us tomorrow meet these first stages where we need define, divulgate, and create languages. So later on, when we have the laws proper, we can actually regulate them. So let's not be afraid. Whenever you say regulate, everybody gets tense, but that is a very later stage. Promote, educate, and train, and then we will do the work that we need to do as government. Thank you, David. Maria Paula, are you there so you can finish your answer? Yes, I am here. So, I can tell you the question again? Okay. Beyond the ethical framework, has the Colombian government considered to propose a regulation that impose duties of algorithm transparency? Well, right now, the ethical framework is our guide in AI transparency in regards to a more stringent law. Right now, it is being developed in the task work, a regulatory framework for artificial intelligence, and that will not only cover this transparency, but rather all the field that we have seen in this webinar have influence and impact in algorithm development. So in the first versions of the ethical framework, that was thought at the beginning was a register of all the algorithm, and through that we will guarantee all the transparency. And this document was created more than a year ago, and due to the comments, suggestions, was morphing and until it ended up as the dashboard that we saw. And this is the first version, and then we want to have a record of all the algorithms, and then to guarantee transparency. This right now there is no a law as such, but actions have been implemented and tools have been developed and are being developed to ensure transparency for the citizens, in particular for AI system used by the government. Thank you, Maria Paula. If all the panelists could turn on their cameras, we would like to thank you for your participation, and we will close this session. Thank you everyone for sharing with us this hour, and we will also like to thank all our assistants and an empirical transparency for logarithmic transparency. And please be aware that we will continue to do activities like this, so we can have this type of issue on the forefront here in Chile and in Latin America, so all the government knows about it, and as well as the citizen. So we ask you to please check the websites that we have shared in the chat, because that way we can also see all the topics that we have seen in this event, not only enrich public governments but society as a whole. So thank you everyone, and see you soon. Thank you so much.